Yes, welcome everyone to this week's. We're coming to the closing year of 2024, but this week, December 11th, 2024, webinar, Stopping the Violence in America. But as we always share, America plays a critical role in influencing other nations and other places around the world. So if we can get a grasp on the violence here, then we'll be able to help others with the violence in different parts of the country. We have had a very beautiful and very enlightening close to 3 years of bringing several different persons, different organizations, coming from different backgrounds, including law enforcement, religious leaders, community activists, mental health workers, and on, who have come on and share with us their testimonies, their work, their prevention and post programs to towards violence. And it's been an incredible, insightful 3 years. And so we're very proud and very happy that we were able to begin this type of webinar on a daily basis. You know, the founder of this was Dr. Hakshahan Moon, who said, we need to deal with gun violence, period, no matter where it is, the gun violence. And we realize that, as I always say, a gun is an inanimate object. What is the root cause to allow a person to pick it up and harm his fellow citizens, his fellow man, his brother, his sister, whatever you want to say? So we're really grateful that this has morphed into a very powerful, as I had said before, insightful program. We have a special guest, and for those who don't know, my name is Reverend Zachary Oliver, and I am the Vice President of UPF, which is the sponsor of this particular Stopping Violence webinar. Today we have another special guest, and I'd like to introduce him, and then after that, I'll give him the floor. His name is Kadir M. Zarour. He has a PhD, so it's Dr. Kadir. Holds graduate degree in public and international relations, public science, liberal studies, and American history. He is currently teaching post-conflict peace building in North Carolina State. Kadir served in the ACLU Wake County chapter, Wake County Interfaith Committee, and is currently the chairman of the Muslim American Public Affairs Council. He has built and maintain relations with public establishments, civic and community leaders. Kadir also serves on the Raleigh sister city, where he represents Raleigh to his hometown of Syria, Lebanon. Additionally, he was appointed in 2021 by the mayor, Marianne Bowman, to the Hispanic and Immigrant Affairs Board, where he serves as a professional chair. His main interest is democracy promotion, diplomacy, interfaith, intercultural dialogue, conflict resolution, and peace building policy. Brother Kadir, Dr. Kadir, welcome to our platform. We look forward to hearing what you have to share with us. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Reverend. Appreciate it. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you for the organizers. Happy to be here. Today, we are talking about really a topic that's an ending from the day of creation. We have to deal with violence, different types of violence. What I'm going to be talking about today, we're talking about conflicts of war, so much broader perspective, but we could learn from the theories and practices over the decades, how to build kind of programs to reduce friction and to basically put humanity back on track where peace is possible. So, but I'm going to start with kind of international, global wars or religion, or excuse me, regional wars. So we all agree, international actors, nonprofit organizations, governments, all agree that they prefer to prevent war from happening. Why? Because it is less expensive. The humanitarian toll is much less risky, and it's cheaper than to rebuild the country after it's being destroyed. So donor countries that have been investing in reconstruction or post-war reconstruction, have adopted broad policies and initiated programs, and of course had funding and programming mechanism to support the prevention of war. War, in a sense, is a fragile undertaking. Most people, including many in the highest echelons of military defense forces or foreign ministries, want to work to avoid war. Nevertheless, war continues to be common, enduring, persistence over the years, over the centuries, over the millennium. And what we need is more organizations, more money, more charisma, more sacrifice to leave the war mechanism, the war establishment, and to start talking about peace, how to establish peace post-conflict. Conflicts, as you know, is certainly very, very expensive in terms of financial burden, certainly division of society, a lot of sacrifices of blood, treasure, and of course, tears and sweat. So there's a lot of attention being, spent on how to prevent wars from happening. Once wars begin, we don't know how it's going to end, when it's going to end, what the consequences are. If most people want to avoid war, the question is, and the costs are so high, why it is also common a practice between countries or within countries. So the evidence that comes from studying warfare and history of warfare and post-conflict resolution, the stories basically explain why wars happen. So if we could possibly minimize the risk of war in the first place, that will reduce the chance of war. And that will reduce the chance of putting burden on the public to sacrifice, send their boys and girls to the front line. So the stories that we have heard over, centuries about warfare provide useful insights into how wars happen and how to avoid warfare. Because warfare, again, like I said, the capacities now, the technology that we have, certainly will make wars much, much more devastating, not only for one country, but for all of us, with, of course, the introduction of nuclear weapons, biological weapons, WMDs. We need to, be aware that such wars are certainly devastating in the future, and we need to avoid that at all costs. So, how do people avoid not joining war? In many countries, many civil wars that we have covered over the last, 150 years, really since 1648, with the Treaty of Westphalia that ended the religious wars in Europe, we look at some communities that did not really join the war, and they have a lot to teach us. They have a lot to share where we can certainly avoid war and talk about peace. So, how do we do this? Meaning, this as in a sense of not participating in war. Okay. So, the fact is, we have a lot of evidence. We have the following components that will help us avoid war. Number one is skilled leadership, leadership that will protect the community without being engaged in warfare. Okay, so leadership is really, really important. Uh, you try as a leader to avoid war by not having your followers, your community becoming active or super active to intimidate the invaders or to take sides during warfare. And that's what the leadership's supposed to do in this case. So how do we, the question is now is how do we uh, predict the cost of the war? The cost, something is gonna be paid, whether in terms of lives, human lives, certainly destruction to cities and communities, division of societies, political risk. The war could drag on. I mean, the war, like, the Hundred Years' War between France and England was supposed to be a weekend war. It lasted for 137 years. So how do we avoid that? So many who live in conflict zones or prone areas to violence, where wars have occurred over and over and over again, they could not have imagined, the question always, that they ask, we could not have imagined this would happen in our community. It's never here. It's a never here. Okay. People go into, a grocery store and get shot. And you always, the clerk will say, or the cashier, this never expected to happen here. So we do need to be aware that it could happen anywhere. Some even claim that it is harder not to acknowledge war. Okay, if you kind of don't talk about war or violence, it's gonna go away. That's not likely to happen. So we have to have this collective acknowledgement that we need to be prepared to act and react to violence, or in this case, to war, which is a wider scope of violence. And these communities have to consider their options. What do we do? Do we join, not join? Do we just stay out of it? Or do we offer ourselves as peacemakers? And that's really important to keep that in mind. So the damage suffered to people and societies over, years, learned that you have to be engaged, but not necessarily through violence. You could be diplomatically involved. You could reach out to share. You could reach out to help bring two sides, the warring sides, to a negotiating table. As we know, one case, for example, I'll talk about in just a few minutes, the case of Rwanda. You have two communities fighting. The third community, the Muslim community, said, no, 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 we should not be involved because we come from both tribes and we should not be involved. So you need to have that leadership that will say this war is not our war. Certainly, the cost is not going to be very minimum. It's going to be certainly damaging to our societies. So as a result, that once they realize that predicting the cost is so high, so extreme, they pull back and they will say, you know what, war is not for us. Maybe we should try another way to communicate with our neighbors, our friends, our fellow human beings. And that's what they need to do, pull back. And that takes leadership skills to do that. Second kind of response to this war, calculating the options. What do communities actually do? Okay. So how do you calculate your options? What do we do? Stay out or be engaged or just move? Well, we cannot leave, one person may be able to leave the country or leave the region or the city, but you cannot have millions of people do that. So predicting that fighters could come to their communities and demand allegiance and involvement motivated basically the non-war communities to take stock and consider options. What do we do if this happened to us? So we have to have a plan at hand so we could focus and we could follow when wars, happen or violence break out. As we have seen in 1990, 1991 in Los Angeles County, we have seen a lot of destruction. The city was not prepared. So how do we prepare ourselves? So many communities worldwide over their experiences in warfare recognize that the potential destructiveness of war and wish they could avoid it, they followed the second option, what is avoid the war if possible. Even try to deter war-minded individuals because the risk of war is too great. It's not going to last a day or an hour or a week. We don't know how it's going to end. Okay, who's going to win, who's going to lose, who's going to die, who's going to be displaced. So it's very important that we have to analyze very deeply the costs and benefits, the costs and benefits. So it's even the winners in a war basically have to pay a heavy cost. Okay, so the choice is of non-engagement and the actions the community takes to achieve this is simply very prudent, and it should be, of course, taken into consideration. We have seen quite a few communities worldwide, the last, since the post-Second World War, have taken that advantage by calculating the options, and they take a decision that we are not gonna be involved in the war. So they try to avoid, the fight for justice and freedom. They want to stay out and solve it diplomatically on a negotiating table. Very, very important. These individuals who are non-war communities also exhibit a readiness to compromise, always ready to compromise. You want to diffuse the situation, you want to compromise, you want to concede on some points. You want to basically motivate your people to accept that readiness to compromise when the time comes. Not everybody during war will achieve everything. Even the winners will end up losing something. Okay. So the vast majority of people in these non-war communities looked at the practical calculations rather than ideals or universal principles. I'm fighting for my country. I'm fighting for a political party or a leader. They make this conscious decision. Practical calculations will determine if they should go to war or not. Sometimes you miscalculate, and that's what they want to basically avoid. So the structure and the process employed by non-war communities differs over time depending on the history, the culture, and the pre-existing system. Tribal systems have their own structure, democratic systems have their own structure. The type of government, every type of government has their own structure and their own preconceived notions how to basically, or policies in place, how to deal with wars if wars break out, or violence in general break out. So the decision by non-war communities not to participate in fighting did not, in most cases, represent indifference about the outcome of the war. Okay, that basically that they agreed that the war could take different directions. Might as well to minimize our losses. The best option is not to be involved in the first place. Now they do unify the community by shared identities. Okay, they fight to keep the community together by reaching out to both warring sides that we are not part of the war, we're not part of the fight, and we want to keep our community safe. So fighting according to the agenda of the non-war community made no sense to them. War is not the answer, it doesn't solve your problem. So they basically exempted themselves after looking at the data, looking at the costs and benefits. They realized that exempting ourselves from war is the best course of action. Otherwise, you'll be consumed in the war and you will implode or explode. Okay. So how do we proceed? The next step for each community is choosing a non-war identity. We don't want to take sides, so what do we do? So, for example, the tribe, ethnicity, nationality, history, religion, economic status, and belief system labels are invoked to basically put people in categories. We against them. And we have heard presidents the last 20 years say it's us against them. Well, you have a third option. You have another group that may say, well, we're not really interested in fighting. We want to be left alone. So this propaganda that reinforces the connotations of these labels should be avoided. Okay. Instead of saying us and them, it's we. It's we. We got to think about we that to minimize the risk of being dragged to war. So non-war communities also chose an identity that both reinforced the unity internally and communicated that identity to their non-war stance, to their, excuse me, to the warring factions, that we are with you, we support you if you choose a course of action that is more humane, certainly non-violent manner, could solve these problems diplomatically and not on a battlefield. So these identities I just mentioned, ethnicity, tribe, history, economic status, et cetera, these identities were strategic in three dimensions as we look at them closely in all these case studies we have compiled over the last 70 years. These identities explicitly rejected the categories employed by those who were fighting. Okay, it's us versus you. Well, no, we have a different group. So it's not you versus us or me versus you. It's us. We are a community together. We belong to the same nation or the same nation state or the same region. And therefore, we're not going to adopt the labels because labels, once you adopt a label, and oftentimes that gets to be rejected. Some people may accept it, and that becomes kind of dangerous, which leading to more tension over time. Second identity, strategic dimension for this identity, they were the non-war communities were comfortable, familiar, and of course they understood their community's needs above the communities that are going to fight. So these communities communicated their own values outwardly. They agreed on a set of values, what they want to do, how they want to define themselves, and they basically projected that openly with the warring factions. We're not taking sides. We are who we are. This is our identity. We're not going to create tension. We want to stay out of the war. And this could really build what we call confidence in other communities to stay out of the war or not to participate in the war. So explicit rejection of these categories of us versus them should be, again, removed from our vocabulary when we are conducting war. So the identity for any community has to be decided internally and has to be decided in a unified vision and not follow division and self-destruction. Okay, so we have to really feel comfortable with these labels. It's always us, we're the good guys, and them, not so good guys. So the second characteristics that non-war communities ascribe to unifying identity is they assert what we call normal past, the identity of normalcy. We are familiar with them. They are familiar with us. We share the same language or culture or way of life or food or whatever. So look for the normalcy. That's what we call normalcy. And this emphasis on normalcy really have two functions. Number one, is the identity that felt right for everyone did not require people to be forced to join them. You're welcome to join, but you're not forced to join. So adopting that sense of normalcy, it creates, reduces the tension and kind of pushes the warring factions to become less radical if you accept the other side. Second function for normalcy is the fact that all communities claim to be neutral during war. Okay, and this is what you want to do. Kind of like example, why doesn't anybody invade Switzerland? Not even the Nazis invaded Switzerland because they have adopted for the last 4 centuries a sense of normalcy. We have Germans, we have Italians, we have French living together, creating a country called Switzerland. So we have developed this idea that we are neutral at all time. Okay, so they want to assure themselves that they adopt that ideology because these communities basically not condemned war per se, but they basically stay out of it because there is a risk if you condemn war, you may be forced to choose sides, and we want to avoid that. Okay. The third kind of characteristics that I will talk about, choosing collective values. What are our collective values? And I have some quotes for you in a second. But these communities that we covered last, 70 or so years after the Second World War, those communities that stayed out of the wars during the Second World War, even the First World War, they talked about collective values, attitudes, principles, mores, if you will, using the French term. They wanted to express their way of life without actually joining the war or supporting one side of the war over the other. For example, I quote this in Colombia, the Colombian Civil War. I quote, most of all is the concept of dignity, their commitment to the right of any Colombian not to be expelled from their land nor attacked for staying on the land. This perception of collective dignity is undoubtedly a key factor in sustaining the cohesion of the community in the face of so many challenges. So to them, they share this identity together, dignity. I have the right to live on my own land. I cannot be driven off the land. Very, very important. Another quote I will share from Burkina Faso, quote, we don't want a homogeneous nation. We appreciate our diversity. We have the spirit of forgiveness. Those are really, really important characteristics that, yeah, the other side is different, but we love them. We like them. We want to live with them. We want to share with them our nation and constitution and so forth and so on. So those are the kind of quotes. And from Rwanda, I'll talk about Rwanda for a second. This is a quote. The first reason Muslims gave for their non-participation in the war was the role of the Islamic faith and the Quran. Okay, again, unifying elements which brought people together, therefore minimizing the risk of spreading the war. In Sri Lanka, the displaced folks in Sri Lanka Civil War felt protected only at Madhu. Madhu is the shrine in, I think, northwest Sri Lanka. That's where they felt everyone that was in that vicinity felt protected because that's a holy place and no one's going to attack you there. So if you wanted to feel safe, that's where you go. No one's going to attack you on either side because they know how holy this place is. And my last quote is from Fiji. Despite deep divisions along racial ethnic lines between Indo-Fijian and indigenous Fijian, both communities tend to follow their ethnic partisan leadership many people refer to collective commitment to the rule of law. Rule of law, the Constitution, the values they have, over the centuries, that's what kept them afloat, therefore staying out of the war. Okay, maintaining community cohesion. That's really another important factor in reducing the chances of war. Basically, a lot of communities adopted do no harm project. Many governments financed by many NGOs, the UN, push for this do no harm project. You want to build a trust in the community between the diverse communities. And this creates what we call legitimacy. So, do no harm project, many governments thought this will help them rectify the situation, build bridges within the community after the war, build trust again, and that gives them legitimacy. Okay, because legitimacy really gives the government the right to tax, the right to rule. Without legitimacy, the government cannot, or if the government is attacking one community at the expense of the other community, that obviously creates tension. So the government that commits violence against its own people is considered illegitimate. So no government wants to be, called illegitimate, even in democracies where we have 52, 54% of the public vote. That means the government and the people are disconnected, disjointed. There is no legitimacy in the government. Second principle with legitimacy is the legitimacy of the government, the expectations of the government to provide basic services, schools, education, healthcare, roads, so forth and so on, safety, public safety. Those are expected. And if the government doesn't provide those basic services, it loses these legitimacy. So personal safety is a big component for the government has to basically carry out the law. Everyone is equal under the law. Once you show favoritism, that will undo some of the benefits over time. So we need to be conscious of that. Most people also said that the political process must allow for everyone to speak fairly and freely without being harmed or threatened or intimidated by the government or by any other group within the community. So you should have the right to practice or your faith. You should have the right to work, right to travel, right to education. So the functions of the government is very, very important. If the government reduces the services, it loses its legitimacy, and therefore revolution, which means war, violence, will take place. So we have to keep that in mind. So how do we, as governments, establish and enforce codes of conduct? Okay, the non-war communities basically looked at behaviors of the government. How does the government behave? Does the government continue to provide services? Does the government continue to provide protection? That's very, very important. So community security is absolutely most important during times of war. And the government cannot basically just favor one community over the other. So most of the non-war communities prohibited weapons being stored in their neighborhoods. They basically prevented fighters to be living in their neighborhoods, basically to show that they are not really taking sides in this in the war. Okay, so they don't want to share risk. They want to share benefits. They do want to support each other. They want to develop a mechanism where they have adopt strategies of mutual protection. If you have absence of government or police force, you need to have the community led by their own civic and religious leaders to come together and form mutual protection plan where every member of the community is protected and they have to contribute to the betterment of the community cohesion. Very important. Okay. So I talked about normalcy earlier. So I'm going to talk about activities to assert peace. How do we really assert peace? Most communities basically look towards civil activists, okay, who are organized. They look at pro-peace activities. They promote, they organize workshops. They have discussion groups. They hold visuals, as we have seen, last, few decades, we have seen a lot of visuals since really Vietnam, discussion groups. And now with online activities, groups from diverse backgrounds are talking and trying to find ways out of the quagmire of war. So most communities, as most non-war communities, were also careful not to undertake peace activities in ways that demonize fighters, okay, or attack fighter, or explicitly threaten fighters on either side. Once you do that, you'll be sucked into the war, taking one side over the other, so you become a target. So you want to be careful how you do your peace activities. You don't want to show a lot of labels. You don't want to show a lot of mean intentions that you're taking sides. So you want to focus on cohesion and, most importantly, the survival of the group. The survival of the group. Okay. So I do want to talk about. Let's see. I do want to talk about how do leaders in non-war communities articulate the values and morals in the community? Well, first, they have to basically always cite tradition. We have never done this. We have never been involved in a war. We have we had held a tradition over, I don't know, hundreds of years that we don't get involved in a war. So these leaders will become basically the traditional mechanism where people will adopt in the future wars if possible. Okay, if future wars break out, they use or they cite those leadership position that they have taken. Okay, so you follow what we call traditionalism. Non-war leaders always appear to be conservative, but not threatening to armed groups, and those leadership have to follow that. Um, Also, there are leadership styles. Very, very important to have leadership styles. Not every person with a gun is a leader. Not every person with a degree is a leader. We have different skills at different times for different confrontations. So leaders could serve as, well, they have to be accessible. All leaders must be accessible to the community. If something happens, you want to know who to call. You want to know who to call upon. So leaders have to be accessible, okay? And of course, they have to be expert in consultation. They are willing to listen. They're accessible. And again, great listening skills, great ability to understand. And above all, they have to be accountable. If they take a leadership position, they are held accountable because they have to show transparency. And that's really, really important to do. So they have to share also decisions they have made with the broader community. They have to basically encourage ideas from the community. Not every leader has a solution for all problems. So they encourage ideas to come from the community, society at large. Always have talent. You gotta capture that talent and use it to make decisions where everyone will benefit from. That's very important. Okay, so engaging with armed groups. So we have violent groups, gangs, what have you. How do you engage with them when violence break out? Okay, now again, armies, move across an area. Militants enter communities looking for recruits and supplies or food. Okay, so fighters are often young men who appear to be unreasoned, who derive pleasure from the war they hold for of their weapons, and who follow command, to the T. They are wary of disloyalty. Anyone that is perceived to be disloyal to their cause may be at risk. So we have to deal with them accordingly. Civilians are unnerved by their apparent lack of discipline and disregard for human life. Okay, so they need to be aware of that. When armed groups again come into the area, most communities react either by joining the dominant force and accepting its political and military cause, or trying to escape notice by appearing passive and unchallenging. Okay? And that could be carry a risk as well, because when you are too passive, you may be treated as, member of the other side or not loyal to their cause. But you have to communicate that with the military leadership who are coming to the area. So the result of either approach is, again, is either a willing or a default alignment with the force that is in control. And of course, peace activists do not want to show that at all. Because once this occurs, that you show that you're taking sides, the community is drawn into the war because it's seen to side with one force and you become the target. So that has to be communicated very well by the leaders with both sides of the warring faction. Okay? So what are the strategies for dealing with armed groups? How do you stay out of the war? Yes, communication is good. So let's talk about a couple of strategies. Number one, non-war communities used pre-existing networks to convince fighters of their sincerity. We are sincere. You're welcome to come to our neighborhood and see we don't have any weapons hidden. We don't have any fighters. That build trust because you don't want your community to be under occupation or under threat. So non-war communities have to really convince the fighters that they are sincere. than they're not taking side. Non-war leaderships, again, have been in place prior to the conflict. They know the network, they know the community, they know the concerns, they understand, and they can communicate that with the invading armies or the war parties. So leadership make the connections between become the bridge, if you will, between their communities and the warring factions. Okay, so that personal knowledge by the leadership is critical. Why? Because they have trust of the community. They have the backing of the community. And now they're building that trust with the warring factions. And they could, in fact, play a role of the peacekeepers later on. Okay. So that's one strategy. Second strategy, non-war communities negotiate directly with armed groups on all sides. You reach out to all sides, say, you know what? We want to establish a relationship with you. We want to negotiate with you. We're not gonna snitch on you, okay? But at the same time, we're not gonna snitch for you. So you need to make that very, very clear. So what we have to take a proactive approach, okay? You force both sides, the combatants, to talk to each other and to talk to you, and that's really, really important to keep in mind. The point of negotiation for non-war communities was not to win something, but to establish a relationship with the fighting groups. You're not in this discussion because you want to win or you want one side to win. You just want to stay out to protect and preserve your community. So you adopt the negotiation tactic where you basically bring, your strategy is to bring engagement, to bring more inclusiveness, if you will, to both sides. And hopefully, this leadership, the non-war community leader, will be able to safeguard his or her own communities at the same time, maybe break the ice and resolve the conflict with the other ruling parties. So non-war communities often describe themselves as having a culture of hospitality. Okay, we welcome you not as invaders, but you are a guest. And that's the language, what we call verbal strategy that they adopt. We have this welcoming tradition, and we welcome you with open door, open arms. We welcome to share our food with you, but we're not interested being involved in this war. So a number of leaders over the years, a lot of good case studies like Bosnia, for example, Afghanistan, established themselves as havens of security where everyone was welcome to food and safety. So many cities in these war-torn countries have some cities, the mayors, local officials. But do you have a question for me? I'm sorry. Okay. So those,
Yeah, yeah, I bet
would-
you want to open up the floor.
okay.
You've got so many great things. Amazing. Yeah, you can conclude a few more remarks and then we can open up
Okay.
I'm sure many
Okay,
people would
sure,
like
sure.
to have.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, among the range of tactics and strategies used by leaders in non-war communities, basically the strategy is of engagement with armed groups, avoid trickery, avoid manipulation, be honest and transparent as much as you can for success. Otherwise, it could be counterproductive, and you will basically be consumed by the war of any miscalculation. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Dr. Kadir. You did a valiant job. So many different kind of categories, but they were quite intriguing and well thought out. I'd just like right now to open up the floor uh, for any questions, and I think I would start. I'm going to call because even even on the international level, this particular person has dealt with conflict resolution, even domestically and on an international scale. So I'm going to call Alan Saunders to see if he has any remarks, because I'm sure that he does. Welcome, Alan.
Yeah, thank you, Reverend Oliver. Yeah, thank you also, Dr. Kadir. Very insightful ideas. Yeah, when you travel around the world, and I think all your ideas are very valid and very true. The challenge is always how do you implement when you have nation states and when you have groups that don't adhere to the rules and the laws that you're talking about. For instance, in Afghanistan, Rwanda, and Bosnia. While those examples are good, but we know in Rwanda there was wholesale massacre of tens of thousands of people. So while I agree with you that it can have that effect, but how my question to you is, how do you deal with the extremists who won't listen to this logical reason, but are working more in an area where they're not interested? And even here in the States, I worked extensively in Paterson, New Jersey, Newark, here in North Carolina, Charlotte, and other areas. You go into these gang areas and you can't always reason with people. They're not interested in the brilliant ideas of trust and sincerity and all the things we all know as educated people know, but they're more interested in their own ideas, which may be just completely counter to what the next gang down the street is. So, how do you engage those groups and those actors in these volatile situations? That's my question.
Well, thank you, Alan. Great question. Well, we talked about different things. I guess we talked about international issues, talk about domestic, city,
Mm-hmm.
inner city America, different
Mm-hmm.
things. The difference between the United States and other places, in the US, you have the freedom to move to another city or another state. Those
Mm-hmm.
communities that we talked about, Rwanda and Afghanistan, other places, they have no place to go. So they
Mm-hmm.
have no choice but to sit down and talk or cave into the militants, if you will. Now,
Mm-hmm.
to handle the militants, you will definitely keep the channel of communication open with them. That's always important, and find out what makes them thrive. What are the benefits that how, I mean, they don't want to listen because they have a hidden agenda. They are benefiting on some level or levels. Now, if you
Mm-hmm.
shut down that level of benefits, whether it's drug money or it's
Mm-hmm.
whatever, or maybe human trafficking or whatever, drug trafficking, human trafficking, human smuggling, weapon trafficking, if you can shut down or control that channel or the benefits, just cut it off or minimize it, that reduces their power. And that forces them to come to the negotiating table. As we have seen with the FARC in Colombia, that kind of brought
Mm-hmm.
them to the negotiating table because the UN was involved, other countries were involved, the US, the EU was involved. So you need to find out the levers of power and what makes them thrive. And you want to shut down
Mm-hmm.
that channel that will make them thrive and continue their policies. But in terms of for the US, we have to have more people in the community. As you know, Americans move, run the country, run the world more than any other culture in the world. And
Mm-hmm.
because, it's better over there. It's better to move to a different state.
Mm-hmm.
And US, we need to really have community leaders that really care about the community, that doing it for the sense of community cohesion. We have a lot of resources in America because the public doesn't wait for our government to respond. The public in America does respond. We just need to have leaders with vision, and we do have leaders with vision. We need just one more element: commitment to reducing the violence. There are a lot of programs in many cities where they offer gang leaders turn your weapons in terms for for cash, exchange for cash or exchange for jobs. If we
Mm-hmm.
could have an agency in America, an agency, I mean, really, if the next president should be thinking about that, we have a lot of jobs in America that people are not applying for. Okay, get
Mm-hmm.
these people to work. You could make more
Mm-hmm.
money legally, okay, safely, than put yourself in harm's way. I know in Chicago 3, 4 years ago, southeast of Chicago, over 1,000 people died gang fighting in one
Mm-hmm.
year. That's outstanding. I was born in Lebanon during wartime, okay,
Mm-hmm.
in the 80s. And guess what? We never had one person going to school to fire a weapon. We never had a person going to a place of worship to fight or burn anything down. Okay, we did have violence, but it was kind of in certain areas. Okay, so in this
Mm-hmm.
country, we have a lot of talented people, we have a lot of resources, but I don't think they are being used wisely or or at all. In fact, in our communities, the best thing is ignore it and it will go away. It doesn't go away,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately. So we
Mm-hmm.
need to really make that linkage. We have to have all the community. It's a community activity. It's not just because I live in a neighborhood, I have got to take it up on myself. I need to bring resources from other communities that could help us accomplish that goal. Very important.
Yeah, I don't know if you have, I like to just address what you said. Actually, there is a parallel in those communities, even though America, as you had said, people can move to other states, but there are still invisible walls that people are trapped in those communities that do have, and they feel they have nowhere to go. And even they feel that they have nowhere to go 3 blocks from their house, where it might be even safer, because
Sure.
there's an invisible force field in their mindset, and also the economic purse that disallows them to move where they really feel safer. There's a whole lot of things there. So you're right to one degree, but I see a parallel as well. But I do appreciate and do agree with you about leadership. And this is why we're having the conference to address this coming Saturday and Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, to address how we can become a national best practice task force, whereby those types of outlets can be more accessible, more concretized, and more visible to the greater America. Did you want to reply to that, Alan? And then we'll have
Yeah.
William.
Yeah. Thank you, Reverend Oliver. Yeah, I agree with your comments, Dr. Kadir. We do need to aim at win-win situations internationally. Not always easy, but with the UN and different organizations coming in, then that can make a difference in the nation states. And then also, it's true in the urban areas. I agree with you, Reverend Oliver. There's certain people that are just not going to move out of their area, and part of it's socioeconomic, part of it's psychological. However, I think people can be, if they're educated young enough, they can begin to see, well, there is a way to go to another area. There is a way to become educated. But I like what both of you are doing, bringing best practices and ideas together, because most people, particularly in the urban areas, but and especially internationally, they have no idea that what any form of effective practices. And that's where I think this conference and workshop this weekend is very much needed. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. We look forward to Alan. He was coming face to face, but because of extenuating circumstances, we understand. So we're going to have him via Zoom. He's going to give his presentation on character education. And I think you had mentioned with France, morale, all those type of things that are very important in reducing violence and changing mindsets. So thank you, Alan, for your sharing. William, Reverend Stoner, please join us. I saw your hand up.
Thank you very much, Doctor, for your presentation. I really appreciate your insight and your understanding of international relations, and I think your ideas would be very, very helpful for our UPF International side of the organization. But the USA side, there are a lot more dynamics, a lot more powers involved. Yeah, moving to another neighborhood, even moving out of your home to another spot, for a lot of people is not going to be an option. Being able to talk to a group coming into the community may not be an option, because anytime certain groups get anywhere close to each other, sometimes there's immediate violence. And violence happens many times not between established groups. For instance, the CEO of United Healthcare just lost his life recently in Manhattan. And that gentleman was very well educated who took his life. But he had a problem with how the healthcare industry was assisting him with his medical problem. And so he lost his wisdom and just resorted to violence. So there's many sources of violence. There's many ways in which it manifests itself in our culture. And it's going to take more than discussions, diplomacy, projects. I feel we have to work at it at a deeper level. So I look forward to more conversation on this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I did I made a difference, between international and the US. I said in the US they have the freedom to go. I didn't say they could go to move out. They have the freedom to do so. In other places, they don't have the right to travel. In this country, they can go to different states. They have the freedom, but maybe not the financial means to do so. But one thing I would comment on that they're not being a part of the game, I think is the law enforcement. I'm sorry, someone had a question? Sorry.
No, no, please continue.
Yeah, I said I was saying that on a local level in the US, for example, the law enforcement should be more engaged. I think we should, I mean, police officers should not be looking for just, people to snitch on other people. We wanted to build trust in the community, especially within the African American community, the Latino community. We don't have that trust. I've been in Raleigh working with our own chief of police, and we had a couple incidents the last 3, 4 years. So I decided to reach out, and we have these discussions with mainly Latin American communities and Latino communities, African American communities, Asian American communities, Muslim American communities, where we want to build trust. We do want to do community policing. That's very important. The police's job is not just arresting people, but also being engaged. How do we improve people? How do we improve relationship between people? The courts also should have a role, not just throwing the book at someone because of violating the law. Give that person another avenue so they don't commit crimes anymore. So I think those two institutions should be in the loop of the discussion in the future. We need to build trust. We should have like kind of a experiment in one city and see how that works for a year or two.
So, yeah, thank you so much. So our conference will address the things. We have some law enforcement people. One of the topics of community. There's some law enforcement organizations out there that are doing a wonderful job. But like we said, many times they're like silos on their own, here, and one. So now how can we bring them more on a national scale that the nation can see and work with and see where we can go from there. Anyone else? Thank you. You're correct. There's I think there's a lot of interplay between some of the things that you share on on an international level that can be applied to the domestic area, and that is also coming to negotiations and understanding even cultures and mindset. You said mindset is very powerful. Mindset can imprison you. You know what I mean? Yeah. So a lot of things you said were quite profound. I don't know. Can people? I didn't hear what he said. Can people hear me? Can you hear? Oh, okay. All right. I just saw a brief message. Anyone else like to ask a few questions as we come to our close? Yeah.
There is a question in the chat, Dr. Zachary.
Yeah.
Zachary.
What is the question? Let's see here. Oh, chat.
The statement. I want to thank you for your ideas, total sense, even common sense, but it seems that people drawn to war and violence are not motivated by common sense. That's from Andrea and Wayne. My mic doesn't work, but I have a question. Is there a root cause of conflict of any kind? Which is a good question.
Okay. I'm trying to read the question.
Is there a root cause
Well,
of conflict of any kind?
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes the word that I don't want to say it's revenge. We were wrong for whatever hundreds of years, and this is our time. We could do it now, so let's do it. That is counterproductive. We have seen wars back and forth, and by the end of the day, kind of like France and Germany, hundreds of wars together. Then 1945, oh, we should have the European Union. Let's think about that. Well, yeah, that revenge certainly plays a role. Someone is feeding that idea of revenge. Let's take revenge because now we can do it. So we need to really avoid that. Look at win-win situation, not lose-win situation or lose-lose situation. And we can do it. We have a lot of interesting people, exciting people, people who care. We need to amplify their voices. And I think they are being not muzzled, they become disinterested for some reason. And we want to keep them on board, to be active, to be active listener and practitioner. They should, be their, in their own rights, leaders of their communities, because their opinions count and their knowledge is more important to me than their opinions, their knowledge, their skills. And we do have a lot of skilled people. Yes, there's a lot of money, as I think Andrea said earlier. There's a lot of money in war making, a lot of money in war making. A problem we have to face in America is a delicate balance between freedom and safety and security. Which one's gonna trump the other one? What's gonna be more important to the American people? Well, sometimes we have to sacrifice something for safety. Okay. I mean, I have the right to speak, but do I have the right to insult you? No. So we need to be careful. We have too much freedom, I think. Whatever I think I should not put you in danger because I feel that way. And we have to just be careful with our opinions and the stuff we
So,
disagree.
so we have another hand, but in response to that, I think it's something you said that needs to be implemented or considered is what are the standards of conduct? So even though you have freedom, there are some standards of conduct that is needed. Is that correct? Yeah. So we have Leslie, welcome.
Yeah, thank you. This is quite a presentation, quite global. It reminds me of some of the work that Marshall Rosenberg did in terms of his work with nonviolent communication. And he said he went into many conflict zones, and his key was listening to people's feelings and needs. And his conclusion was people have the same feelings and the same needs. So once they recognize that, they can come to the table. But how to get there, how to get people to speak up of what they're really concerned about. Because as you say, the word revenge is always there. Yeah. Have you had any contact with that experience with that kind of method?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this clearly makes sense. That takes a lot of research, but we don't want to wait 50 years before we make a decision and take a stand. Certainly, we need to have people hands-on working with people. When you have a disconnect, I mean, I'm sure you probably had a preconceived notion about me. You saw my name. You don't know what this guy looked like. You probably Googled me. I don't know what you did, but I'm sure someone did something. That happens. The unknown is always a factor that plays in our mind. But we always mainly tend to think negative of the other side. But when you sit and you break bread with them, you go on vacation with them, you hang out with them, go to a football game with them, oh, they are just like us. They like pizza, we like salad, and we like whatever. So that absence of communication is counterproductive, and we should amplify that. We should reach out. Take the initiative. People say, no, they should come to me first because I'm more important. No, peace is more important, and you have to reach out. Take the position, okay? Become proactive. Don't just wait until something happened. Oh, I didn't know he was upset. I don't know she was so, depressed. Well, take the initiative. Reach out. Talk to someone. But that's what I do. I'm really active. I like to talk, and that's what I do. I get paid doing it, by the way, just so you know, as I teach.
That's good. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very
Mhm.
much.
Mhm.
So we're coming to our close. I want to thank you again, Kadir, Dr. Kadir, for it was a magnificent presentation. And I do concur with one of the persons, I think it was William or someone said that our international organization outreach programs are really indicative of what you are sharing. And I feel that you can find some absolute synergy and common grounds with a lot of our other participants on an international scale. So we look forward to seeing you in one of our international conferences that Sharon Pace will absolutely invite you to, and we'll hold you to coming. Okay, so
Happy
you
to.
will see.
Happy to.
You will definitely enjoy it. And I think what you share is magnificent, and it really makes sense. So I want to thank everyone and just want to just share that we are having a conference, and you're invited if you like. We love as
Thank
well to Las Vegas, and Sharon can share what that is. That's this coming weekend. If you can get there, that's fine. But it is called, unfolding our best practices so that we can come together. It's not just a conference of presentation, but it's a conference of bringing like-minded soldiers and outreachers together to see how we can collectively come together and bring some true resolve to the conflicts that we are facing here in America and ultimately the world. So I want to thank you all for coming. Arcadio, I don't know if you know, but we do have you saying a few words in the beginning and in our plenary service. So I just wanted to give you a heads up. And our dear brother, Alan Saunders, will give a presentation on our character education via Zoom. So we want to thank everyone who have supported us in all this time, during this time, and want to again, Dr. Kadir, if you want to thank you for coming. If you want to say a couple of words before we depart, you're welcome.
Yes, again, thank you very much for organizing this and for inviting me. Thank you, Sharon. I do like to, want you to know that I'm really interested in peace work. We have a lot of talent in our communities, and we need to just link the people together.
Mhm.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. Okay, everyone, God bless you. Those who are coming this weekend, please, I look forward to seeing you. We're going to have a great conference.
Mhm.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Thank you again, Dr. Kadir.
Take care.
Have a
Mhm.
wonderful
Thank you. Really good.
Yeah, very nice. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr.
Yes,
Kadir.
thank you. Thank you. I
Thank
will
you,
be there
everybody.
tomorrow, Saturday.
Thank you. God bless you all. Have a good day.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. See you, Dr. Reverend.
Mhm.
Very, very, very much for this.
Mhm.
Okay, everyone. God bless. Thank you, EJ. Thank you, Nadia, always. And, for
Mhm.
those again.